You are listening to the Aging Options podcast with elder law attorney Rajiv Nagaich. As the best-selling author of Your Retirement, Dream or Disaster, and host of 2 hit public television specials, Rajiv Nagaich has emerged as a retirement planning thought leader known for his willingness to disrupt the status quo. In this weekly podcast, Rajiv Nagaich offers piercing insights about the hidden traps in traditional retirement planning advice, along with straight talk about the problems during retirement that money, investments, estate plans, and insurance products don't address. If your retirement plan has been all about saving money, creating an estate plan, and buying long-term care insurance, what Rajiv Nagaich says may surprise you.
And after working a lifetime pulling all these pieces together about retirement, we think we've got it all controlled. So what you're going to hear today is the call from a child of somebody who's prepared for retirement. And now the child is finding that dad should not be living at home for one reason or another. And they've looked at some retirement communities. And looking at the retirement communities and how they work, here's the question she's asking.
Yes, I was wondering if, let's say my father needs to go to assisted living. He owns a house, and the assisted living place requires that he has 3 years worth of cash to live there before Medicaid kicks in, before you can apply for Medicaid. So I was wondering if he sells his house and he takes the money for 3 years and puts it in a savings account and uses his money to get in, can he spend the rest of his house money to do what he wants with?
All right, so let's break that down. I mean, it is so common for people to think they have got their retirement plan all taken care of. Why? Because we have a house paid for. Clearly, in this case, that's the situation. And we've got some money. And if we can just somehow magically live happily all the way to the end, never fall ill, I mean, that's the image people have. But the reality, of course, is that over 70% of Americans over the age of 65 and about 85% of Americans over the age of 85 will not be able to live out their lives without falling ill or needing help of other people. And that's what the situation is. So you've got a situation, look, where somebody has done quite a bit of work. They have a house that is paid for. They have their Social Security income. They have probably some other pension, some other income that's coming in. And they're looking at life and saying that if just somehow I can manage to live out my life healthy all the way to the end, I don't have anything to worry about. And then you've got a daughter who's calling and saying, oh, dad's not able to live in his own home by himself without help. So we are looking to assisted living. So they run down to look at some retirement communities. Well, it turns out the retirement community this lady is looking at, it says that, look, you have to pay us privately for a minimum of 3 years. If you can pay us privately for 3 years, then your dad can go on Medicaid, right? And so the question here really is, dad's got a house, it's paid for, probably the value of the house is more than the cost will be for the 3 years. And is dad free to just give that money away? And what we are not realizing is we've got a competing number of interests that we are looking at up here. From the retirement community's perspective, they're saying, come in, pay us 3 years privately, and then we will let you go on Medicaid. But Medicaid has a totally different rule. Medicaid says dad can go on Medicaid when you have spent all your money down to $2,000. And on the day that you apply for Medicaid, there are 2 questions that are going to be asked that are the most important questions. Question number 1, do you have more than $2,000? No, I don't. Question number 2, have you given away anything of value in the last 5 years from the day that you're applying for Medicaid? If the answer is yes, then Medicaid will say, then why do you think we're dumb enough to pay your way? Go get that money back, spend that down, then come look us up. So we have 2 competing interests that are going, and what the caller does not realize is that to satisfy one person by giving the money away, whatever the extra money will be in their bank account. So for 3, let's make up numbers. Let's say the house sells for $600,000. That's the amount of money they put in their pocket. The cost of care in the retirement community is, let's say, $6,000 on a monthly basis. And the income is $4,000 a month. So the difference between the income and the cost of care is $2,000 a month. And that for 3 years will amount to about $72,000. You see the math? 2,000 times 12 is 24,000 times 3 years. But let's pretend for a second we want to build in a buffer up here. What if the cost of care goes up, which it probably will? So dad will need to have about $100,000 to his name for him to be able to go to this retirement community. And so if you, to the uninitiated, people who don't look into this ahead of time, dad gives $500,000 to the children. And everything is okay. So 3 years go by, and then we apply for Medicaid. 3 years go by, the community is saying, yeah, now you can go on Medicaid. And dad had gifted the money out. So dad only has $2,000. So at the end of 3 years, we go to Medicaid, apply. Question number 1, do you have more than $2,000, dad? No, I don't. Question number 2, have you given away anything of value in the last 5 years? Yes, I have. What did you give away? $500,000. Then why do you think we're dumb enough to, pay your way? From that moment on, you're going to be ineligible to apply for Medicaid for no more than 5 years. So you got another 5 years you have to traverse. So the question that really needs to be addressed at this point of time is not whether dad has too much money, but what are the rules for Medicaid and how do we satisfy both the retirement community and Medicaid? And let's take a look at that. First of all, the retirement community that is saying that you have to pay us 3 years, in my experience, there is no rule about 3 years. That's what they're asking for. The retirement community marketplace today is like a Turkish bazaar. They're going to say, we want to be paid privately for 3 years. You can bargain and say, I think we have enough money to pay for 1 year, and maybe you settle for 2 years private pay or a year and a half private pay. So the first thing you as the consumer need to understand, these are all negotiable terms. There is nothing set in stone about how many years of private pay. So you need someone to help you with that piece of it. But let's say you do settle on either 2 years or 3 years. Now you will know how much extra money you have. And at that point in time, depending on which Medicaid program you goes to, you can gift the money and either wait up to 5 years, or you can bring that down from 5 years to as little as 2 years or as little as no years. Let me explain that to you. Now, this, by the way, is going to be different in every state. Now I'm talking about Washington State, the rules that apply to Medicaid here. In Washington State, there are no less than 5 different Medicaid programs. Every program starts out the same way. It says, have you given away any money? And if you have, then you don't get Medicaid. 2 other programs are exception to the rule, have you given money away? In other words, these 2 programs, if you can qualify for them, these programs will say, have you given money away? Yes, I have. Well, we'll still give you Medicaid. So when you're applying for Medicaid, you need to be applying for the right program. So if dad can qualify, there's some income rules, there's some jurisdiction, which county you're living in rules. And if you can qualify for these programs, then yes, we can give $500,000 away, pay privately for 3 years. At the end of 3 years, apply for Medicaid and get Medicaid. Let's pretend for a second they don't qualify for this rule, right? There's no program that's going to satisfy this particular person's need. Then there's another rule that comes into play. Another rule comes into play is if a child has been living with a parent for at least 2 years, and it can be shown that the parent would not have been able to live at home without the assistance of the child, then on the day that the parent is going to apply for Medicaid, the parent can gift the house to the child as compensation for the 2 years and apply for Medicaid right away. And the transfer of the house from the parent to the child will not cause any Medicaid wait period or ineligibility period. Now, clearly in this case, this would not apply because dad's moving to a retirement community. But you need to know there are rules like this that need to be looked into when you're looking at Medicaid. And then the last rule, of course, the worst rule is going to be the worst case scenario, that if dad has given money away, then he must wait at least 5 years. So in certain circumstances, we gift the money up front. We go to this retirement community Show them we can pay for 3 years, get dad admitted there, and then immediately transfer all the money out of dad's name, give it to the children. The children can go to some lawyer and say, look, dad has lost his mind. He's given all this money. I don't want it in my name. I want you to put it into a safe harbor trust. And the trust will say that no matter who the trustee or the manager of this money is, these people can only use the money to take care of dad as long as dad is living. And when dad dies, the money will be distributed according to whatever his last will and testament said. By putting the money into a trust, if a child gets into a car accident, gets into a divorce situation, then nobody can take this money away from dad as long as dad is living. So you can protect the money for dad and you can still start that 5-year period looking. And then if this is the rule that you're going to use, you will pay privately not for 3 years, but for 5 years. So the retirement community is going to be really happy with you. But at the end of 5 years, on the 5th year and the first day, 1 day after 5 years, now we will apply for Medicaid. And Medicaid will say, have you given away any money in the last 5 years? No, I did not. Okay, so then we will give you Medicaid benefits. So the point I make is this. Look, we do a lot of retirement planning, and these types of questions are going to probably, if you're a small to medium-sized estates, these questions are going to come to plague you at some point of time. And rather than take the attitude that you have all the answers that you need, employ the services of some good elder law attorney in your community. They can make this journey a lot more predictable and make your life a lot more easier. Thank you for watching. We'll come back with another question on our next episode of Aging Options, the podcast.
Hello, producer Alec here. Thank you for tuning into this episode of Aging Options, the podcast. If you would like to know more about this topic and many other topics surrounding retirement, aging, and how to ensure that you're able to live out the retirement you deserve, please head on over to AgingOptions.com. If you want a comprehensive, deep dive into planning your retirement and don't want to wait until next week's podcast, I highly recommend Rajiv's best-selling book, Your Retirement, Dream or Disaster. You can find both soft and hardcover editions on the AgingOptions.com website. Please follow us on social media at Aging Options. If you want to see this podcast in video form, you can find us on YouTube, also at Aging Options. Until next week, age on.